There are many pleasures in working at a cathedral, and one of them is that I get to listen to sermons, to those preached by my colleagues and by our guests. That is invariably a blessing, and yesterday morning was no exception when I presided at the Eucharist and Pete Atkinson was the preacher. Pete's text comprised 7 verses from the beginning of St. Mark's Gospel, in which the evangelist very succinctly covers the baptism of Jesus, his temptation in the wilderness, and his emergence as a preacher in the region of Galilee. Mark records that as Jesus is coming up out of the Jordan, he sees the heavens torn apart. Pete noted that the Greek verb that Mark uses is schizomenous. It's the Greek verb from which we get the English schism, and it's the same verb that Mark uses at the end of his gospel when Jesus breathes his last and the curtain of the temple is torn in two. The tearing apart of the heavens, the tearing in two of the temple curtain. The use of the same verb is sometimes a device to catch the reader's attention. What does Mark want us to notice about these 2 moments in the story he is telling? In the first, the heavens, the celestial dwelling place of God, are torn apart and the divine Spirit descends. In the second, the temple curtain, hanging at the entrance to the earthly dwelling place of God, is torn in two, and the human eye can see into the Holy of Holies beyond it. At the baptism and on the cross, Mark shows us that nothing divides heaven from earth. Nothing divides God from humanity. That's what we call incarnation. In Christ, God shares fully a human life and a human death. So there is nothing that we can know or experience that is not intimate, known and experienced by God. For in God we live and move and have our being. But that's a theological principle. According to it, here am I, and there are you, living and moving and having our being in God. What does that principle mean to any of us? I was rereading an old journal of mine yesterday from over 10 years ago. In it, I wrote that I had worked out that the light of Christ burned within me. When I wrote that, I had been a priest for 10 years. I had a lifetime of church-going, Bible reading and praying behind me. But not until then, not until my mid-40s, did I articulate what the incarnation meant for me. That the life of God, made visible at the River Jordan and on the cross of Calvary, lives within me, within all of us. In God, we live and move and have our being. And this is where it gets, first, embarrassing. What was I thinking of for the first 45 years of my life? And then, risky. To articulate a principle, nothing divides heaven from earth, may invite skepticism or bewilderment. To make a claim, the life of God lives within me, that's likely to invite ridicule or hostility. Because where's the evidence for the claim? If the life of God lives within me or within you, then does it look like it does? Those who know me well and love me best would have something to say about that. If the proof of the pudding is in the eating, then the proof of the divine indwelling is in the loving. Are we allowing our thoughts and words and acts to become thoughts and words and acts of love? Schizomenus. In English, a schism is always a bad thing. Remember the hymn, "The Church is one foundation," and the line, "Though with a scornful wonder men see her sore oppressed, by schisms rent asunder, by heresies distressed." But the schism in the sky and the schism in the curtain point us to a schism in ourselves. "Rend your hearts and not your garments," writes the prophet Joel in a passage that we always read on Ash Wednesday. It will take us a lifetime to see this rending through, to allow all our jealousy and anger and deceit and fear to be torn to pieces, to allow the life-giving Spirit of God to do her work within us. But that's what I call incarnation. Bless you.